Hi, my name is Cora Stack here, Dr. Cora Stack, and I want to talk about. I've just changed what I want to talk about. Just a couple of things that I feel are more important. It's just about trying to get it right, and sometimes you have to do a few takes, So this is where I'm finishing now because it's too much work for one person. Institutional failures, overspending, and who pays the price in Ireland. Across Ireland, citizens are facing rising cost of living, rising taxes, and growing pressures on public services. Yet at the same time, we see scandal after scandal of overspending, lack of accountability, and institutional failures in the very bodies meant to serve the public. TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency, was created to protect children, but repeated reports from HIQA and the Ombudsman for Children highlight serious failings, children left at risk, foster places breaking down, delays in assessments, and cases falling through the cracks. And I've written a paper on this, and the amount of money TUSLA spend on legal bills, to protect themselves is staggering. Families report being ignored while frontline staff say they're overwhelmed and unsupported. This is just not bad management. This is a systemic failure of governance. Simple as that. The HSE. The HSE is by far the biggest spender of public money in Ireland, yet year after year we hear about overspending, delays and a lack of accountability. Patients wait years on hospital lists while billions are pumped into a system that appears not to deliver the outcomes people deserve. Staff shortages, poor planning, poor infrastructure and a management culture resistant to reform are consistently highlighted. National Children's Hospital at St James's. The most striking example of failure is the new National Children's Hospital at St James's. This was originally budgeted as €650 million. It's now projected to cost over €2 billion. This makes it the most expensive hospital in the world. No senior figure has ever been held accountable for this runaway spend. Citizens are now asking, how did this happen and who's paying for it? The answer is, we all are. The taxpayer, the person who pays the squeeze little. Metrolink and other mega projects. The story doesn't end there. Metrolink, the long-promised double rail system, is projected to cost over €9 billion and counting. Large infrastructure projects consistently come in years late and billions over budget. Instead of transparency, we get shifting deadlines, revised costings, and vague promises. The bigger picture. The RTE's financial management made headlines, but in comparison, it is actually small. The real issue is systemic. A culture of weak governance, lack of accountability, and institutional failures across the state. Whether it's TUSLA, the HSE, or massive capital projects, the common thread is that no one takes responsibility, and ordinary taxpayers foot the bill. That's why we have the penny left. After our bills. If Ireland is serious about democracy, or one of the reasons, accountability and protecting the public interest, there must be independent oversight, transparent reporting and consequences for failure. Without reform, citizens will continue to pay through higher taxes, poor services and eroded trust in the state itself. Call to action. Let's ask the hard questions. Who is accountable? Who pays? And when will change come? So it's just that I'd like to point out those issues, in terms of, balance. Again, it's just it's the balance that's needed in all of this. We have major problems with accountability. And again, is there a role for the protective disclosures here in terms of ensuring that oversight bodies are genuinely independent from those they're investigating? Is there collusion between them, or is it a fear or a culture of fear between sort of investigators and the institutions, like he who pays who pays the piper calls the tune sort of thing? You're afraid that they might lose their jobs or they might lose the next investigation if they don't side with the institution. I don't know, has that ever really been investigated? I once talked to somebody abroad who was involved in HR, independent investigations, and I asked her who did she normally side with, and she said, well, with the employer. And why would that be? How could it always be? Because they they paid me. They were the payers. That's a major issue. That in a lot of cases the independent investigations, the oversight investigator is paid by the institution that and that in itself seems to me to be completely wrong, because already there is a conflict of interest there. So that there has to be some way the Protective Disclosures Act, as we've said, there are serious concerns that the Protective Disclosure Act has been hugely weakened by being blocked from judicial oversight. There's also the issue of whether the judiciary itself should be subjected to more oversight using the Protective Disclosures Act. That's another point. We all, but we don't want to go from one kind of dictatorship to another, where everything is people are afraid to do anything because of excessive oversight. So I think we need balance between accountability, oversight, and balance and fairness and accommodation. So all of these things need to be taken into account, so that circumstances, or different circumstances, need perhaps slight tweaking in the way they're handled by the different situations. So a one-size-fits-all model for oversight may not be appropriate, but certainly in most cases would be appropriate. But there are always, I think, needs to be exceptions to the rule, given the circumstances to take account, and I'll call that, inverted commas, accommodation. And the reason I'll call that is for fairness and balance, and taking the individual circumstances of the situation into account, modulo the need for proper accountability and proper independent oversight. And do we need Protective Disclosures acts or amendments to come in there as well? And how do we get more, be assured that our judiciary are genuine, independent of vested interests or any other group? It's not just the judiciary, but are particularly excluded, from the Protective Disclosures Act. But should they be included in some kind of way? But they have to have, judicial, it has to have independent oversight. And again, there has to be a sense of balance, fairness, and accommodation, and all these things, because you don't want to go from one system into an over-regulated system where people feel they have no kind of individual they have no individual they should have individual discretion. So I think we have to have individual discretion, but that it's taking the circumstances into account, as well as being mindful of the oversight systems that we have in place. And I really think we need to have this kind of balance between both if we're to get it right. Because if we go from one kind of regime to another kind of regime which is excessively regulated, then I think that won't work either. So it's getting that balance right, and I think that's a matter for perhaps the courts to decide, and maybe to examine where is the balance between oversight issues with collusion and or concerns about collusion, and how do you get that balance right, in a fair way, in a transparent way, without making it too again, more kind of fear, putting more kind of fear of individual circumstances. I think there has to be some kind of discretion at the local level, to the person, to do what's right by the situation, even with the oversight, involved. So that's kind of balance of fairness. Now, I have to get the better wording for this, but I think we need checks and balance, but also we certainly need accommodation, inverted commas, in all these procedures, rather than having strict procedures where people are terrified of breaching them, so that they don't serve the public interest.